There we go.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, you don't have my picture. I'm sorry. Ugh.
There you go.
Got it now.
Yeah, that's what the was.
Okay, we are live.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of planning committee, January 26th at 6:30. Marilyn, may I have the roll, please?
Yes, Ms. Pavano,
Here.
Mr. Burway,
I'm present.
Mr. Jenks, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And we have the pledge of allegiance, please.
Right.
Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to indulge the committee tonight for one thing. We have Stephanie and Michelle here to
Oh,
discuss number 6, which is the AARP. Would you mind if we change that to number 3 so that they can make a little presentation and then leave? Is that all right with my committee?
Absolutely. With me anyway.
Sounds good.
Okay, okay,
All right, now I have to figure out
okay.
how to share the screen.
Hey, when I was reading about this, Michelle, I thought of you and your committee. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, it definitely is something that the Youth and Human Services Committee is certainly behind and supports, in a lot of different ways, because it does tie in with the mission of that committee quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of work.
Okay, I am having trouble.
And Jim, while Arnett's trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
just to
thank you. Go
piggyback
ahead.
on that, We do have a subcommittee on the Youth and Human Services Committee. So the Youth and Human Services Committee, Sandy and David, if you're not familiar with how that's set up, it's sort of an umbrella committee, and then we have 5 subcommittees that are part of that committee, so that smaller groups can meet and focus on specific areas of interest. So we have a mental health and substance abuse subcommittee, we have a food insecurity subcommittee, we have a social media subcommittee, a community kindness subcommittee, and a senior living subcommittee. And so one of the things that certainly the senior living subcommittee has been focusing on is exploring this idea.
Okay,
Got it, Arnett.
so this is a quick 8-minute video that Stephanie and Michelle recommended, and I took a quick look at it, and I think it helps explain the program. If you will indulge us, we will go ahead.
Friendly States and Communities, or the network for short. This is the first in a series of modules that will guide you through the process of making your community more age-friendly by joining the network. In this module, we'll talk about why age-friendly communities are so important. We'll explore some of the challenges related to our increasing lifespans and how the network can help solve these problems in your community. And finally, we'll give you an overview of the process for joining the network. Everything from forming a team and assessing your community's needs to creating an action plan to address those needs. First, let's review what the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities is. The network is a voluntary membership program that serves as a framework for state and local leaders to implement changes that make communities more livable for people of all ages. The network is a forum to share national and global research, planning models, and best practices. While most municipalities that join the network are counties, cities, or towns, in 2017, AARP expanded the network to allow states and territories to enroll. So what exactly do we mean by age-friendly? Well, Age-friendly communities are places that make it easy for people to live their best lives at every age.
Arden, I think the video turned off. We lost
Yeah.
the volume.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it.
Engagement.
Is it back?
It's important to remember
Yes.
that age-friendly communities aren't just for older adults. Surveys conducted by AARP show that older and younger adults share similar concerns. Our survey shows that people of all ages and from every generation value the same community features. Things like well-maintained healthcare facilities, parks, and grocery stores are important to people of all ages. So why are age-friendly communities important? Worldwide, the population is aging, and the United States is no exception. In fact, our population is aging more quickly than you might expect. In 2015, there were almost 46 million people aged 65 or older. By 2030, there will be 73 million people aged 65 or older. By what year do you think older adults will outnumber children in the United States? 2035? 2050? Or do you think that older adults will never outnumber children? By 2035, there will be more people aged 65 years or older in the United States than children. For the first time in US history, older adults will outnumber children. Also, people are living longer. In 1950, the life expectancy for Americans was 68. Today, it is 78. And today's average 10-year-old has a 50% chance of living to 104. AARP survey results show that people over the age of 50 have a strong desire to stay in their home and community as they age, and they're making plans to do so. However, many of our communities weren't designed for an aging population. For example, did you know that in the United States, men typically outlive their ability to safely drive by 6 years and women by a full decade? And here's a really important thing to note. People can become isolated in places where it is hard to get around, especially after they stop driving. And extended periods of isolation can have devastating effects on physical health. In fact, the health risk of prolonged isolation are equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Take a moment to think about your community. Is it easy for people who don't or can't drive to shop, work, and socialize? For those who want to downsize or move to more flexible or accessible housing, are there housing options available in the community? Does your community have ways to help residents of all ages connect and socialize? If you're worried that your community is not built to support the needs of a growing number of aging people, you're not alone. Joining the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities can help your community tackle issues like these. Communities of all sizes can enroll. Our network includes communities with populations of less than 100 people and some with more than 10 million, and membership is free. Let's take a look at the steps involved in joining the network. Joining the network isn't a certification or designation that your community is age-friendly. Rather, it is a public commitment by local leadership to become an age-friendly state or community, one that serves people of all ages. First, identify some likely stakeholders in this work. Look around to see who already has a hand in serving the needs of older adults, or who is shaping the housing and transportation options in your community. Assess what elected officials are saying about the community and identify potential champions for this effort, as well as those who could play an important support role. This is the beginning of your project team. Once you've done that, decide on a convener to lead the work. The convener will be responsible for completing an application to submit to AARP to join the network. The application will collect basic information about your community, and it will identify some of the major challenges and opportunities that are likely to arise. The convener will also be responsible for working with your local government if they're not the lead themselves. A signed letter of commitment from your highest local or state elected official is a requirement to join, and it must accompany and support your application. Once enrolled, you'll need to follow the age-friendly process, which requires your team to conduct an assessment of your community's needs, create an action plan that builds on community strengths and preferences, implement your action plan, periodically review your progress in the action plan, share best practices or your key learnings with other age-friendly communities, write a progress report at the end of year 5. We'll go into more detail about each phase of the process in the following modules. What can you expect at the end of this 5-year process? Well, here are some typical results. Communities in later phases of the process told us 60% achieved a change in public policy. The most frequent policy changes involved improvements in housing, transportation, outdoor spaces and buildings, and health and community services. 34% reported a private sector investment or action had taken place as a result of their age-friendly work. The most frequent investments were related to housing, health and community services, or communication and information. 85% described other successes, including raising awareness of age-friendly issues, increasing collaboration within the community, integrating an age-friendly lens into strategic planning. This concludes Module 1. We hope you have a better understanding of what makes age-friendly work so important and how joining the network can help to create a community that serves people of all ages.
Okay, I'm not sure why that didn't work completely, but the information was there. And I think both Stephanie and Michelle, if they want to speak to it, I will say I've met with Stephanie and Michelle. And one of the things that this program provides is a real structure it provides support for evaluation and for a plan to help our seniors and our residents age in place and be in an age-friendly community. It's really nothing new. I mean, it's what our goal is anyway. It's a major goal of the senior center, and we're doing a lot of these things already. But I can let Stephanie and or Michelle speak to the advantages of it and how they would see it working. So I'll shut up now.
Michelle, you want me to take it?
Go ahead, Stephanie. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll take it. Just to give you some history, I started researching this about 2 years ago. So I have a lot of the statistics and demographic information and all of that already in place. One of the things that I thought this would be helpful is because the present movement is about aging in place and allowing people to age safely within their homes. So I thought that this would be something good for us to look at, because we are, like Arnett said, already doing a lot of the things that the AARP age-friendly communities are doing. To give you a little bit more of a frame of reference, what this looks at, it looks at 8 domains of livability. So the 8 domains of livability are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, work and civic engagement, communication and information, community and health services. And basically, the idea is that the availability and quality of these community features impact the well-being of older adults and help make communities more livable for people of all ages. So those would be the different domains or the things that we would be looking at to be evaluated over the course of 5 years. We are already doing pretty well from the livability perspective, because I did look up our livability score to see how Cheshire's doing in comparison to some of the towns that are already within the AARP age-friendly network. So just to give you a sense, there's 5 towns in Connecticut right now that are part of the AARP age-friendly network. They're Greenwich, Newtown, Glastonbury, Simsbury, and Bethel. So Cheshire, our livability scale right now is at a 52. But just so you have a frame of reference, Greenwich is 53, Newtown is 56, Glastonbury's 53, Simsbury's 53, and Bethel's 55. So we're like right in there already without being a part of this. But the idea is to look at what the needs of the aging population are and to expand or change or create our programming in accordance to those needs so that we can continue on the same trajectory, because we're doing well. We want to continue doing well. So that's really what this is all about. You know, if people want more information, there's more videos available. There's more things available. There's a whole 5-year plan. It's done through community assessments, through conversation, through writing up what your outcomes are. But I do think, based upon the research I've done and how long I've been working for the town, that we are hitting all those goals. It's just a matter of expanding upon those things so that our older people can age in place. So that's what I have to say. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Dave or Jim?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
It,
Oh, Dave is talking, but it's mute.
it may take a little while for Dave to figure out how to unmute himself. So I'm just trying to understand this a little bit more as far as what Cheshire, what we're going to kind of accomplish with this. So are we shooting for a certain livability index that's significantly higher than we already have? And what might that be? And is there, are we designated at some point once we achieve some sort of, once we accomplish some kind of higher index as a AARP kind of certified something or other? I mean, what's the goal, end goal of this?
Well, we don't really need to achieve a certain livability index. What the idea is to show that we're committed to the community with the aging process. So what happens is you do your application, you do your initial paperwork, and you get a 2-year designation at that point that you are working within the AARP Age-Friendly Network, and that you have a commitment to completing this process, this evaluation process. So then at the 2-year point, you submit we submit the preliminary information. So that would be based upon community dialogue, based upon the feedback we're getting, that type of thing. Then from there, the plan is created. And at the end of that plan, then at the end of the 2 years, you then get a 3-year designation. And then upon the 5 years, you get a designation that you've completed what is looked at to be an AARP age-friendly community. And you could choose at that point to reevaluate everything all over again, or you could choose at that point to just that, you're an AARP age-friendly community. The idea is, I think, one, to engage the public and older people in part of this process and to determine what they need. I think that the livability index, it would be nice if we could go up a few points, as the other towns are doing around us. I think that is a designation for us to have that might elevate our level of how we're perceived, like with that Money magazine or things like that, to kind of help us a little bit. So that's really what it is. But I really truly do believe that it's so that the older people in the community know we're doing this, feel that they're being heard, and that we're responding to those needs for them, especially when you look at statistically the aging population and what the needs of the aging population are. And the present movement, and it has been actually for several years, is to age in place, is for people to age in place and to age safely within the community. So if we can do that for them, that would be great to help that continue along the way it's supposed to. An example would be our transportation services. We have very good transportation services in town. So that's something that we do very well in, but all the funding for that comes from the 5310 grant program. So it's something that's being assessed. If that need changes, do we apply for another bus? Do we do different things? So it's just one of those domains where we're doing very well. So is there a number we're looking for? Not really. Is it to show commitment to the community? Yes. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Is there any kind of one area in particular of these 8 areas that we feel like we can really improve through this program?
I don't know. I would have to look at it in more detail. I think that would come out of the community assessments based upon the questionnaires. If you look through the packets that came out, I included some sample questions within the questionnaires, because AARP has standard questionnaires or they can be adapted, but there are some sample questions in there. So I think the feedback we get would determine what our perceived deficits are. So.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of thoughts, and they might be a little bit opposed to each other, so I'm not just thinking out loud here. as one who's approaching this, and the 5-year plan will work out just about right for me to retirement age. I do like the fact that focuses like this on seniors, focuses like we did with the initiative for the environment, help focus certain aspects of our community to energize people to maybe do a little bit more in that area. And I think that's good. Where I'm having a problem with an inconsistency in my mind is I don't like that different groups are being picked out. I don't like that. Okay, we're going to spend a lot of emphasis on seniors. Does that mean we're not caring as much about the kids? Okay, well, then we're going to get one for the kids. Then what happens to the people in the middle? So I don't like the fact that we're segregating out different groups, but I see all of the things in this I think it was 14-page document you sent out and some other information. And I do read AARP magazine every month because I find it quite interesting. I've been getting it for 10 years now. And I think I'd like to see us move forward with this because it will help us focus on, Jim and I got through the budget committee more sidewalks over money to begin the process for sidewalks up on Cheshire Road. And I think that's important because we've got a lot of seniors that live across from the park. And I think that's helpful. And that can be a focus. This can help focus some of what I personally want to see done in town. And that is some better sidewalks and some better transportation. I was very happy that we got the bus. It would have been nice if we got the 2 because we could have expanded that. It's nice that we voted the other night to increase the dispatcher so that we could help improve that program and make it logistically run a little bit smoother. So I'm in favor of working with this, but I can see realistically and understand the side of not wanting to have every little group have their own little focus group. So I sort of would understand if there's some council members that may not want to do this, but personally, I'd like to see us move forward and be part of this and help focus on things that could make it better. That being said, I do have a question that's actually probably directed at Arnett, if I could. What do we think is going to be involved in? And I'm asking you to have the global view of this from the different departments. What do you think would be involved in staff time? So effectively, what are we not going to be able to do to participate in this? Because I don't think we're going to be adding a lot of staff time on.
No. And this is one of the things that I had talked about with Stephanie and Michelle. Stephanie has already done some of the legwork on this, and a lot of the elements of this program are things that we should be doing or are already doing. So in terms of additional staff time, if there is a little bit more work, it's within the objective of our senior services, the goals of our senior services division. The other advantage to our senior center is we have a very active group of volunteers, and they like to do work. They like to be busy. They like to know that they're doing something productive and effective. And we're lucky to have that group built in at the senior center.
Yep.
So I don't see an exorbitant amount of staff time over and above what's already there. I see some. If we identify new programs or services, there may be additional staff or some costs involved. But other than that, there really are no outside costs. And I have confidence in our staff and volunteers that they can handle this over the next 5 years. Stephanie, you can't leave.
I have no plans on leaving.
And David, if I can respond as well to the first piece of what you said, I think it's interesting to think about the fact that we are in, maybe not the unique position, but the wonderful position of having a human services department that meets people's needs across the lifespan. So it completely falls under the mission of our department to target different populations, identify service gaps and needs, and then meet those needs. And so, I feel confident in saying, while we're looking at this program for our seniors, we're also looking at programs for our youth, and we're still managing the middle of the lifespan as well. Not to mention some of what AARP, this program, brings in is that intergenerational component, which we would then enhance and foster further. So unifying, so it'd be a program that would benefit both the seniors and the young people, and possibly even those people in the middle who are maybe caring for an elderly relative or needing some respite or whatnot. So it really is something that we can expand to meet needs across the lifespan. And the other thing, as we were talking about early on in the meeting, is that we do have this wonderful town council appointed committee, called the Youth and Human Services Committee, which is there are about 30 people who are affiliated with that committee right now. So we've got the official members and alternates, and then we've got liaisons who are connected to all sorts of different community agencies and areas. And so I really feel like that is a committee that we're going to be able to rely on to support this program as well, along with the fact that some of the initiatives would be supported by staff and programs that are already running. So, I feel like this would be sort of a seamless transition in a lot of different ways. We're certainly not entering into it, anticipating the need for more staff, particularly not right away or even in the near future. So I really am very confident that this is a program that will benefit our community in its entirety and all ages for sure.
I have a couple questions. Number one, does being involved with this program give us any advantage perhaps for grants or anything like that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. There are AARP mini grants. The AARP mini grants that are available to people, whether you're involved with this program or not, but there is access to the AARP mini grants that we can utilize if need be. The other thing too is there has been communication already among with the AARP age-friendly communities and me. I've reached out to them to explore the process and to talk a little bit about how it works and things like that. And there is the Connecticut Association of Senior Center Personnel, and there's a lot of dialogue within the emails within that group about the AARP age-friendly community. So there's access to a lot of supports and a lot of people who have going through the process, saying, apply for this grant. If you come up with this is available to you. So there is a big network already in place, which is helpful because it is a big process. It's a 5-year plan, but parts of it have already been addressed. As I said, I started looking into this about 2 years ago. So, so there a lot of the information is already gathered. The senior living subcommittee, this is one of the areas we've been focusing on. So there's about half a dozen of us already kind of working on this a little bit with that part of the Youth and Human Services Committee. So I guess the short answer is yes, there are resources available to us should we pursue this further. So I just feel very passionate about it. So it's something like once I start talking about it, I keep talking about it. So tell me to stop if I need to. So,
well, I know that we have a lot of people who have sold properties because they are, their children have left and so forth. I think we have probably a larger senior population here in Cheshire. And sometimes maybe they feel like they're not given the, I'm not saying respect, but they're not, we don't think about them as much and we want to think about them. So I think this program, it would be absolutely wonderful. I don't know whether we will be voting on that tonight, but what we're doing is we're gathering information and appreciate everything that you have brought forward. And Jim and Dave, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just clarify, so Stephanie and Michelle, what we would need from council to pursue this program is simply a resolution stating that the town council supports this effort.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we need a letter of commitment and then a proclamation if that can go along with it. And I have samples of what those letters can look like and things like that. So
you would come and talk to them again if we go that route. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Can I just suggest one thing? I'm sorry, I know we're concluding the topic.
No, fine, go.
And it was a big multi-page document. Can we get maybe a one-page simple action steps that we need to do to move forward? And if it's as simple as getting the highest chief elected official signature to move forward and then you start consolidating things, that's fine. I didn't really see the simple action steps that we need to do so that this isn't going to get blown out of proportion when others who may not be as favorable to this will look at it and say, oh, we got to do all this stuff. No, we don't. And I think Arnett said that, and that, you folks are doing a lot of it already. So we get a simple bullet point. These are the steps that we need to do if we want to be part of it moving forward. I think that could potentially head off some people that might say it's going to be complicated. I think you know what I mean.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That's a good idea.
David. Perfect. Okay, then we can go on to, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
We'll go on to discussion of item 3. And what we're basically doing tonight is, because this is the first time we're meeting, discussing some of the things that have been carried over. Arnett, that is correct. You gave me this list, so this is a discussion for all of us, so I want to hear from all of you. So the next one would be on naming town-owned properties, and I'd like to ask David, since you've been on planning, what your thoughts are.
Well, Jim and I have both been on planning and quite,
Yeah, we'll get to Jim next.
okay, quite frankly, this came up and then we never did anything with it. It was just mentioned at one meeting, and I'd like to, before we do much with it, unless we have council members have some changes to it, and I don't think I do, I'd like to hear from Park and Rec because it really affects a lot of what they're doing. And I'd like to get their input if there needs to be some changes to this. But personally, I don't see any changes that I, as a council member, would have to the existing plan.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks. I don't even remember us talking about this, quite honestly. Are we looking at modifying the ordinance or something, or are we just
We're
approving
looking
it
at
again?
whether we want to further this or what do we want to do?
The reason this came up recently, 2 years ago, came up with the naming of the Cheshire Park Pavilion for Jay's brother, Jardum.
Mark Jardum.
Mark Jardum.
Okay.
Other than I were. So name it after Mark. And we said, maybe it's time to take a review because we are at one time the Park and Rec said, well, no more trees. That's too much trouble to maintain them. Let's not name trees. And of course, I've seen some that have been fairly recently named. So I think we need to hear from Park and Rec what they would like the policy to be. We're getting more and more park benches. We accepted appropriations in the last year or two for several park benches at a couple grand a piece. So those obviously are named for somebody. I'd like to see what the policy is and see if it needs to be updated. I mean, from my perspective, that's the reason it's coming up. I think it's just time
Okay.
for that.
Yeah, I didn't have any real comments as far as the current ordinance that we have or guidelines that we have. There was some language in there that seemed a little odd to me, like the person needs to be respected by everyone in the community or something like that. Kind of,
Right, I read that, yeah.
who's judging that exactly? But so that's a little bit odd, but it's not a make or break thing for sure.
So is that the consensus that we would like to refer this to Parks and Rec, or
Yeah, I think that makes
make a
sense at this
motion,
point.
Arnett, for that, or?
No, you don't need a motion for that. We'll contact Parks and Rec and follow up with that. I will remind you the council did vote on a moratorium on naming until this was reviewed.
Oh,
Just so
okay.
you're aware of that. That's not really a problem. We really don't have anything in the wings right now, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. But we'll contact Park and Recreation and we'll get the commission and get some feedback for you for your next meeting.
This is kind of like a case by case basis when it comes up, I would assume.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's fine.
Yep.
All right, the next discussion is on the legal services for Labor Council. Sounds like that might be a priority, but I'd like to hear from Jim and David to see how you feel. Jim, you can go first on this one.
Okay, I mean,
What do we
the-
feel?
are we looking to, do we need to hire a new labor council now? Is that the case? I mean, we just finished our round of negotiations with all the different bargaining units. I can't imagine why we'd be looking to hire a new attorney now, but is that the case? I don't know.
A little bit of background, the town did an RFP back in February of 2020. Good timing. For legal services for town attorney and bond counsel and labor attorney. The town attorney was appointed. We fortunate to have Jeff D'Onofrio. Bond counsel was recently appointed, but because of COVID and then because of all our labor contracts, the council and staff chose not to make any changes in the labor attorney. So at this point, you have a couple of choices. You can leave the status quo. We have Floyd Dugas from Bircham Moses, We can look at the submissions from the original RFP, although it is a couple of years old. We do have several firms that had submitted and we can talk with them, or you can go out for another RFP. It's totally the council's decision.
David?
I just want to, and we're in public session, so I'm going to be careful how I say this. I'm reminding Jim, and actually, I'm not sure if Sandy was in on those. There are some things that maybe we would like to have in a labor council
Mhm.
that we don't necessarily feel we're getting right now.
Right.
And the town manager was very clear about some of those to us. And Jim, I'm not sure if it was just our committee or if it was to the council as a whole when we were interviewing candidates for town attorney. But again, like Arnett said, we didn't do anything because we were in the middle of all the contracts. They're all settled now. So now it's time that we should revisit this issue before we end up getting into the next round. And maybe we can enhance the services that are available to us into more modern ways of doing some things. And whatnot. I'm not going to say any more than that. I think now you're remembering maybe Jim from that, and I know Arnett knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I remember relative to the town attorney, not necessarily the labor council. So maybe it's a discussion we should have with Sean again, perhaps. But I mean, if this is when we should do it, that makes sense. I would say maybe given the submissions are 2 years old, we maybe would want to go back out for newer, fresher submissions.
I think I'd also like to hear from the town attorney. He does not do labor, so he has no horse in this race.
Right.
Right.
He's got no conflict whatsoever. I'd like to hear from him as to his thoughts of what is out there, because he does deal with multiple other municipalities. So I'd like to hear his thoughts on that. So maybe our next meeting, we could hear his thoughts before we go out for an RFP, or we can do the simultaneous, get the RFP ready to go and hear from him.
I agree with you, David. I think I'd like to talk to the town attorney also, so.
Yeah, and that would be an executive session because we would like to discuss the performance of our existing
Correct.
labor council as well as the need to continue contract negotiations.
Is that okay with you, Jim?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and I think we'll put that on for referral to the town attorney.
Yep.
Okay, the next discussion is on the poet laureate. I'm just getting this information from Arnett. I know nothing about any of this, so I'm learning kind of along, right here with you. Arnett, do you want to give me any background on this or?
Well, just quickly, we had briefly discussed this, I don't know, the years blur, but last year. But in the packet, in your packet was the original request, which was
Right.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And Noel had actually found some information from Wallingford and North Haven. They have poet laureates, and in your packet, it gives a little description of what their program entails. And they also had an application process. So that's helpful for you to review. The state doesn't go into a lot of detail in terms of the statutes. I think the very last page of your packet section on this, the poet laureate position was established, and there's a few requirements, but it's really up to each municipality as to whether or not it's something they choose to do, similar to a town historian or a town crier. It's the council's decision to have that. And I do have to say I liked the method, the process that the other towns used to solicit poet laureates. I think it would make our lives simpler to have that kind of structure.
As far as the selection committee you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, I'm supportive of the idea. I think it's something that the community would appreciate. I think it's a part of, I mean, what we just talked about tonight with the AARP livable community. This would be something that would be, I think, feed into. It's certainly a priority of a coalition for sustainable Cheshire that I'm a part of. Community and strengthening community is part of sustainability. So it's part of that. I also am aware that I think the ball and socket they're looking at some of their arts programming going forward and are going to be wanting to have, this kind of a program that a poet laureate would bring to the table. So there's a kind of almost a commercial aspect to it as well. I do know that these are people that have classes and events and things with people of all ages. So it's not just something for kids. It's not just something for seniors. It's really for everybody. So like I said, I think it's a good thing. It's not something that's going to cost us anything. Obviously, it's not going to be a budget item for us. So to me, it makes a lot of sense.
David?
I'm in agreement with this, Jim. I think you hit a lot of the areas that I hit that I agree with. I think culturally, we have an awful lot that this position could enhance at the library, which is where we got support from the library director asking us to consider this. I think it's probably one of the genesis of this, but I think we could enhance the high school programming. As one who did not think high school English was all that interesting, I think having outside people coming in, once in a while makes it almost like a field trip kind of thing, and may enhance that. So I do know there are some that have a small government view of things, and I don't say they don't have the right to their opinion. I just don't agree with it. So I think there are some that will not support adding another position, even if it's an unpaid position, and whatever. So there's some in the community that have said to me that they are not in favor of adding another position that could be used as a jumping off board for running away with it in the position and making things that aren't there into it. So I think we'd have to be careful who we screen for, and that they are looking specifically at just this poet and culturally how that relates to items being done around town.
And the council resolution can control that. We have to be very careful with the language. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of this, and I would say, we want to write up some kind of a draft or something that we want to consider at our next meeting as to what the duties and responsibilities would be. Is that all right?
Yes, and I'm in favor of this too, because, they can work with performing arts. And there was a lot of things mentioned in here, about being, poetry and we have ball and soccer. I think this is kind of a whole community that could grow. I'd like to see a discussion for further discuss this also. So I'd like to see this move forward.
Also put something together.
Yeah, I also would add that I think that an area in town like the Watch Factory shops with reread books and with Olive and Henry, I would imagine that I haven't discussed this with them, but I would imagine that they would be interested in some sort of an event that involved the poet laureate or some kind of a poetry slam or something too.
Exactly.
So, there's a lot of positives to it. I would also say, David, to what you were saying about, some concerns about someone kind of running away with it. I mean, the poet laureate position sounds like it's somewhat established in a lot of other towns. So we must have an idea of what, kind of what exactly they're doing and what the limits are and what they're doing, if that's the word. But
I think we'd have to be careful how we write it up. But yeah, I like to see it go forward.
We have a historian already that also is pretty well defined. That so it's there's a model for it, I think.
That's interesting that you mentioned that one, because that was one of the basis for making sure that this is kept carefully monitored.
Okay.
Because of issues, and I'm not going to say more than that, but
I know where you're coming from. Do we want to go back on the AARP? I don't want anyone to feel like I don't want to push anything forward that we haven't discussed. So if we're not ready to make a decision on this, we could put it on the next agenda, whatever both of you would like to do.
I'd like an action plan for it, what we need to do. And I'm ready to vote for it once we see that, because I think we want to be ready before we vote.
Right. Yeah.
With that, I think.
Jim, you okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think having something in writing would be good. It sounded like all we really need to do was to get the approval from the elected, the senior elected official kind of thing, and they can go forward. But if we can just see that first, that'd be good.
I agree with that. I think Cheshire's in a good position because we have such good people in the
Yeah.
senior center. We have, you have the youth group, you have human services. I think
Mhm.
we're in a really good position to support this program,
Yeah.
but well, I agree with that. Does anyone else have anything that should be discussed or they'd like to discuss? Because this is kind of like our first meeting and we're putting what we're gonna do in 2022, so does anyone have any thoughts?
I don't have anything additional at this point.
You can think about it maybe for another meeting.
Well, while you're thinking,
Yeah, go
while
ahead.
you're thinking, I
Yeah.
just want to be sure that I know what I'm doing, what we're doing. So
Okay.
we are going to get input, staff is going to get input from the Park and Rec Commission on the policy, the naming policy. We'll come back at our next planning committee meeting.
Yes.
We're going to get Jeff D'Onofrio's thoughts about the legal services RFP for Labor Council. We can also start drafting a draft RFP based on the one that we did a couple of years ago. The Poet Laureate, we're going to actually draft up a proposal, potential resolution or requirements, and we'll bring that back to your next meeting. And then for the AARP Livable Community, we will be getting a very simple bulleted plan on the program and what council's being asked to do.
And I think we probably would like Attorney D'Onofrio to meet with us perhaps
Sure.
at our next meeting.
Okay, and we can do that in executive session.
Yes, that's good. Okay, does anyone else have anything else? I think we're covered everything we needed to cover.
I
Thank
have to say, Madam Chairman, your first meeting running the planning committee in 45 minutes, you took care of issues that with Jim and I saw for 2 years that we just, we did other things. We hired a new town attorney and, did other things, but I give you credit for moving these along with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for indulging me with my first meeting. So I guess we're.
Excellent first meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dave. You guys are easy to work with. So I guess we need a motion to, do we need a motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn, yep.
We do.
So
So
moved.
moved.